Today we're reviewing a highly anticipated controller, the 8BitDo Ultimate Bluetooth Controller. So real quick, let's address the elephant in the room. I am going to make a separate, shorter video as to the pronunciation. Is it 8BitDo? Is it 8BitDo?
Like 8BitDo did.
Because we are going to be looking at 8BitDo's latest controller.
We're taking a look at 8BitDo's brand new wireless Ultimate Controller.
Not today, anyway. 8BitDo is known for their retro controllers, or retro style controllers.
It is extremely confusing and has many layers of the stinky onion, much like is it Pokemon Arceus or Arceus? And yes, you hear it from the developer's mouth, or in this case, the manufacturer, because it's a physical controller, but then the gaming community takes it somewhere else. Anyway, the consensus is Nintendo 8BitDo, even though the legal team at 8BitDo, in an effort to not get sued by Nintendo, would like to be 8BitDo, but really, wink wink, even their PR team's like, it's 8BitDo. I guess you don't need to watch that short video, but you still should, because I'm going to go in depth with their company and a little bit of their background, lineage, or history, if you will. But at the end of the day, call it what you like, what you enjoy saying, what's fun for you, just like the whole Pokemon Arceus thing. It's not that deep. To remove any confusion about this controller, it is for use on the Nintendo Switch. However, there is a version for $20 cheaper that only uses a 2.4 gigahertz dongle, not Bluetooth connectivity. That is for use on PC or anything that can use a USB dongle. But we are going to talk about the distinct differences about these two models that launch together. Without further ado, I'm proud to bring you the most in-depth, comprehensive review of the 8BitDo, that's fun, Ultimate Bluetooth Controller. Let's get it. As for the packaging and included accessories with the Ultimate Bluetooth Controller, if you want to pause the outer box so you can read some of the key features, you can do so now. Now, both variants of this controller do come in a white and black version, and something I found very refreshing, the $50 and $70 variant of this controller both include a very high quality charging dock right out of the gate. And you look at something like Microsoft charging $50 for their themed charging docks, and Sony charging this many monies for their licensed DualSense charging dock for the PS5. That leaves a bit of a bitter taste on the tip of the tongue. 8BitDo hooking you up here though, that's kind of nice. Decent presentation. I use the word decent because this isn't any laser cut foam or anything like that. This is just some cardboard. However, this is a $70 controller. And if 8BitDo is going to cut costs in their packaging a little bit and give us an included charging dock, well worth it in my opinion. Your controller pops dangerously out of the top. Make sure that it doesn't fall and crash into your desk and you have to edit it out of your video. Edit? That's a weird word. And you have to edit it out of your video so it doesn't look like you're a crumb bum. Then you have your charging dock in this bottom section. Little hole up top, take one or two fingers, dealer's choice. I prefer two. Stick them in the hole. And this is where you are going to have your instruction manual as well as a 1 meter, very short USB-C cable. It is rubber, it's not braided or microfiber. Not terribly lightweight, however it is pretty flexible for a rubber cable. But again, since this is the Bluetooth or wireless variant of this controller, you're probably just going to use this for charging unless you want to go wired, in which case BYOC, bring your own cable, probably something a little bit longer. On the USB-C end of the cable, it says 8BitDo, and there is kind of a pixelated 8-bit heart logo on the USB-A end. As for the included charging dock, I'll be overlaying some B-roll, but it is very high quality. You do have non-slip rubberized feet on the bottom that do a great job, and you do have a little plastic tray that houses your wireless adapter, which I do really like. The wireless adapter itself is also a very handsome design and pops sleek and cleanly into the bottom of the charging case. You do also have an LED light bar at the bottom, which will give you the status of your controller. And then you have the 8BitDo logo stamped in the top. And it is very easy to drop this controller into the dock. I'll show you that in just a moment. And of course you have your USB-C plug in the back to get used to it. Now with a lot of gaming peripherals, the included charging dock, it's very hard to seat the controller or mouse in place. As where with this controller, you literally chuck it in sideways, maybe at an incline. Okay, well that doesn't work. But any way that a normal human being would slap this controller into place, there we go. Gotta hear that click. Gotta hear that distinct click. And on the controller itself, you do have a little plastic sneeze guard right here. As for the included instruction manual, as you know, I'm a bit of a connoisseur snob, and I'm not only not happy, I'm quite the opposite. This looks like the map that Christopher Columbus had when he was sailing the seven seas. This is ridiculous. English is buried in this general region here. Font is very small, so you might have to strain your corneas a little bit. However, you don't need this because you have this video. It's much more thorough, much more in-depth, also timestamped with chapters. But, wow. It's crucial that there's a very thorough, in-depth, well laid out, easy to follow instruction manual, and in this case, that simply is not the case. Cosmetically, I think this is a handsome controller. It has a pretty classy, understated design. I'll be overlaying more of that B-roll that I probably shot in one take because I'm extremely lazy. This controller sports a flat, matte faceplate and rear shell with gloss black bases of the thumbsticks and glossy black face buttons with white lettering. It's a very clean, elegant looking controller, but it's not going to blow your hair back. 3 out of 5. Manufacturer's weight and dimensions are on screen here, popping up in front of my face. However, I like to get my own. Not that I don't trust them. I'm sure they're very trustworthy, but holy shit, my batteries are low. 244 grams. Let me get one good reading out of you. 8.6 ounces. And as for the shell design, it looks like 8BitDo went with the licensed Nintendo Switch Pro controller, measurements or dimensions, which is a good thing because that ergonomically is a very comfortable controller, in my opinion. Pretty much tied or one rung down from the Xbox One/Series controllers, which are ergonomically damn near perfect. Again, IMO, or in my opinion. You gotta preface that on the internet. There can be a little bit of confusion amongst the ranks when it comes to the current model lineup from 8BitDo, so I'm gonna go ahead and alleviate any of that confusion now. There is currently a wired-only Xbox One and Series controller, also named the Ultimate. There's a little bit of confusion for us. This controller will be getting its own comprehensive review on the channel in the near future. Their site can also be a little bit of a chore, a little tedious to actually navigate and find what you're looking for. The controller we're reviewing here today, which actually has 2 versions or variants, come over here to gamepads, and you're going to see the Ultimate Bluetooth. That's what we have on deck here today. Then the Ultimate Wired, that's that Xbox controller we were just looking at. And then the Ultimate 2.4 gigahertz, which is a $20 cheaper version of the controller we're testing here today that shares a lot of the same core features. However, it is missing a lot of core features as well. The first one being Bluetooth, so you're not going to be able to use it on Switch. And unfortunately, the dongle version doesn't work at all on Switch. Even plugging the dongle into one of the USB ports on the dock, or just trying to play wired to the dock, period, is a no-go. Now, in my personal and humble opinion, I do recommend that all the stallions and stallionettes watching this review pop the extra $20 and get the Ultimate. Let me explain why. Well, they're both called the Ultimate. The Ultimate Bluetooth, not the Ultimate 2.4 gigahertz. Here's why. For the additional $20, you're getting Bluetooth support, so all the platforms you can use the $50 version on, such as a Raspberry Pi, or something running Android OS, or, you know, God knows whatever. But the Bluetooth version is also going to work on Nintendo Switch, or anything with a Bluetooth connection. Sweet, so that opens up a ton more compatibility. But here's the real kicker. If you look at this highly in-depth comparison chart on their landing page, the $50 variant is using Alps potentiometer thumbsticks, will get stick drift, as were the joysticks in the $70 Bluetooth Ultimate are Hall effect magnetic sensors that will never get stick drift, at least not in your lifetime. So the controller might fail due to other components shitting out over time, but your thumbsticks, analog sticks, joysticks, those will not be the culprits, as it isn't a physical connection getting worn down over time like the carbon strike patches of those potentiometers. Rather, it's just connectivity with magnets being broken that's sensing your thumbsticks being moved. Fantastic. You'll never get stick drift. That alone is worth my recommendation to pop the extra $20 for the Bluetooth version. But we're not done just yet. There's 2 more features that make this controller that much sweeter on the nips and that much sweeter on the lips. You're getting an additional 7 hours of battery life, 22 versus 15. And as the Bluetooth version is designed for use on the Switch, you are getting motion control, so that 6-axis motion control. So if you want to use that for aiming on PC, which is a required feature in a lot of Switch games. So does the 2.4 gigahertz version have anything going for it that the Bluetooth version doesn't? Is there any pros or reasons you would pop for the 2.4G version? Yeah, a couple. If you want it in pink, there is a pastel pink color available. Gorgeous. Nice, little flat matte pink. Also, there is a slider on the back of the 2.4G model to switch between X input and D input if you're playing on PC. One other notable difference, the face buttons are also swapped on the Bluetooth version as it is designed for Switch use. You will have B here and A here as opposed to the North American Xbox layout. Keep in mind that's not a huge deal whatsoever other than the cosmetic appearance of what face button you see, because when you're playing on PC, any reputable launcher like Steam is going to automatically have key bindings for whatever controller you're using, so keep that in mind. The world-renowned D-pad or directional pad is lauded in the controller community as being one of the best, so if we're going off everyone else's recommendation, this is a 5 out of 5, but since this is Daddy's review, this is going to be a 4 out of 5. 8BitDo is not being a hoe, in fact, they're being a bro when it comes to this D-pad. It's good for 2 reasons. One, it has a little niblet in the center, which lets you pivot or rotate very smoothly and easily. Also, you do have contact patches under the entire D-pad to make sure that you register your inputs in each direction. That's great. You know what? Actually, screw it. I'm gonna just jump on board with everyone else. 5 out of 5. It's like a perfect D-pad. It really is clicky, tactile, nice. You know what? No. 4.5 out of 5. That way I stay true to myself. but also kind of follow with the crowd. The only thing for me, it was a little bit difficult to get diagonal inputs, but it wasn't really a deal breaker. 4.5 out of 5. Now, as for the face or action buttons, I'm simply not a fan. Cosmetically, I think they look a little bit cheap. They have this gloss black with white lettering that simply doesn't do it for me. They are similar or reminiscent to an Xbox One controller in shape, size, and spacing, but something about the actual feel of actuating the switches feels incredibly sloppy. That partially comes back to the fact that these are a membrane design. There's a rubber plunger mechanism underneath this front shell that feels a little bit squishy and mushy, but that's not a huge deal. In fact, a lot of gamers, in fact I would say probably more than 50%, prefer membrane switches because that's what they're used to. For those gamers, you might pick up this controller and be savagely stimulated. For me, I was left a little bit flaccid due to the feeling of actuating these switches. 3 out of 5. Now let's talk about the accessory button suite. So that is going to be the plus and minus button, this little star button. They're in a good placement where you can quickly and easily hit all them. They have a decent resistance and they're far enough out of the front shell to where you can cleanly hit them. No complaints here. I'm going to go ahead and give them a 4 out of 5. Now let's get on to the analog sticks, thumbsticks, joysticks, front niblets, whatever the hell you want to call them. I'm going to call them what they are. A joy. They're using magnetic Hall effect sensors. That is if you pop for the $70 Bluetooth version versus the $50 2.4 version. Huge selling factor, and I do believe will become the new standard or norm with controllers over the next 8 to 10 years or so. And if you're thinking, Kevin, where'd you pull that number from? Your tookus? No, it's actually just looking historically at where controllers have been. Over the last 3 or 4 decades or so, we've been using potentiometer thumbstick modules, and it's going to take probably about another decade for us to get away from that, considering it is just now becoming a thing. Don't get me wrong, the Sega Dreamcast over here was the first mainstream dispensed to the masses controller with magnetic Hall effect sensors in the thumbsticks, but that technology died off for several years and is kind of now popping off again, but only in the Nintendo Switch segment. They have a good resistance. I will say I wish they had some kind of anti-friction rings around the thumbstick gates, so when you are at full lock, you're gliding along smooth plastic rather than the front shell, which isn't like sandpaper, but it's also not the most pleasant. The rubber or silicone compound that they did use is pretty good. It's a little bit slick in the center, but it does have this rib texture or design around the outsides, which provides plenty of grip. They are very short sticks, reminiscent of a standard controller, so you are going to want to put some extensions on there if you're going to be playing first-person shooters. There are first-person shooters on Switch. I have the BioShock trilogy and the Borderlands trilogy. Play them both frequently. Clicking down L3 and R3 feels pretty good. There's no loose wiggly or hollow tinny sounds. Over here in the one, the only, the gamepad tester, let's apply dark theme to save our corneas. Now we are not getting a visual representation with those wheels or circles, so we're not going to be able to test the circularity, at least not in this mode, wired through X input. As you can see, the controller is labeled as 8BitDo Ultimate Controller, and these thumbsticks, no surprise here, are perfectly calibrated right out of the box with 0 stick drift. Looking at axis 0, 1, 2, and 5, those are for the left and right analog sticks on the vertical and horizontal axis. When I move the sticks and then I stop taking my fingers off completely, they all default to 0.00392, showing an absolutely flawless calibration right out of the factory. Now let's activate that 0 dead zone mode and see if that does anything for us. Okay, I want to see it in real time when I turn this on. I'll put that up to my top monitor over there. And you do get a little pop-up warning saying, please note that disable the, I don't like the grammar. Please note that disable the central dead zone may cause the analog drift. We don't want the analog drift. Holy moly, so with that disable dead zone mode turned on, the controller is actually not recognized in Gamepad Tester or X Input Test, basically any of my software programs. It causes major compatibility issues with like everything on my PC. So let's leave that off. But as it is, even with that feature turned off, the thumbsticks are still fantastic. 5 out of 5. All right, my internet comrades, we're gonna find out if control freaks or slipover caps work with this controller. Now, of course, universal slipover caps like these will work, but as far as licensed control freaks, I have the Nintendo Switch variant right here. These are red galaxies. In essence, they should work because they're for the Nintendo Switch controller. Okay, they snap on very easily, but as you can see, they are wiggly-diggly, and I simply wouldn't trust them because they're not secure. The Xbox One and Series variant of Control Freaks makes a very nice sound, but just simply doesn't snap on. No, I don't like the way it feels. And I've got some white galaxies here for PS4 and 5. Yes, they use the same exact thumbstick caps. Okay, same thing as the Switch. In fact, the Switch and PS4 variants are almost identical in diameter and shape, and as you can see, this is loose and wiggly as well. I wouldn't recommend any of the licensed Control Freak variants, so go ahead and use these universals. Now let's move on to these bumpers, and they're very interesting. They are smaller than I'm used to as they don't really wrap around the side of the front shell, but it's not a complaint for me whatsoever. In fact, these are good. They're easy to hit with both the tip of my index finger as well as the meat. I know it's not called the mate, but the this little ball right here. They're completely and totally functional, but nothing to write home about. I'm giving them a 4 out of 5. As for the triggers, very smooth, linear squeeze, nice resistance, snap back to their neutral position very quickly, buttery smooth. These are an absolute joy, and the only thing that would make them a 5 out of 5 would be if there were some kind of trigger stops or locks, and I do think if 8BitDo releases an Ultimate Pro version, this is called the Ultimate as well, but you know what I'm talking about, a Pro controller with esports-like features, trigger locks or stops. This does have rear buttons, which we're going to talk about, maybe swappable thumbsticks, mechanical face buttons, maybe a slightly longer warranty. Anywho, on that variant, the trigger stops would grab it a 5 out of 5. This is going to be a 4 out of 5. Rear buttons or back paddles. In this case, they are rear buttons as they are sunken in with the rear shell, almost completely flush. These are gosh darn good. Of the 2 rear button controllers that I have tested and reviewed on this channel, not just for the Nintendo Switch platform, but across all platforms, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, this is my favorite 2-button thus far. With my gamer icicles just sitting here clicking like ASMR, just sitting here for hours doing this. Why do I like these so much? How much time you got? First of all, they are so quiet. They're almost silent. So if you're a streamer or YouTuber, you're not picking up a lot of clicks, but they're also like a perfect size to where they will fit many gamers' hand sizes, whether you have petite hands or a big old bunch of bratwursts, a pack of bananas for fingers. You're still gonna be able to cover these because they went with a very good size and placement of these rear buttons. Where you wanna naturally rest your hand when you grip the rear shell is where these rear buttons are. But they require enough force or resistance to where I didn't find myself accidentally actuating them. That's great. Now, me personally, this comes down to personal preference and also your requirements for the games that you play. I primarily play first-person shooters and third-person action-adventure games, like Uncharted and The Last of Us, stuff like that. I personally prefer 4 rear buttons, or controllers like Razer that offer 6 or more programmable rear buttons, usually 4 rear buttons, then maybe an extra set of bumpers up here. So you can keep your fingers on the thumbsticks or analog sticks, walking and aiming, rather than touching the D-pad and face buttons. But I do have full respect for the 2 rear button game. It's the preference of a lot of gamers, and this is the best I've tested thus far in that category. These are great, 5 out of 5. These are a joy. The initial pairing of the controller to the Switch console is freakishly easy. I dropped out in 3rd grade and I was able to figure it out in about 5 seconds. You're going to turn on this controller with the power button. This LED light will begin to flash. You're going to flip around on the backside and make sure she is in Bluetooth mode, which is to the left. Now for the first time and first time only that you pair to your console, you're going to hold down this pairing button right here for about 3 seconds. Status light will begin flashing even more rapidly than before. Take a different controller and on the home menu of the Switch, go to Controllers. Then go to Change Grip/Order. Squeeze both those triggers. Oh, I actually didn't even need to do that. Just by having it in the pairing mode with that pairing button. Found the new controller. Press A when you're ready. I'm always ready. Now that you are linked to the console, you do not need to pair it anymore, and you will be able to wake up the console and put it to sleep. Let's try that now. As for battery life, you do have a very respectable 1000 milliamp hour onboard battery, which is going to give you around 22 hours of playtime, and also sports pretty fast charging, getting a full charge in about 3 hours. These 4 status lights are what player you are, 1 through 4, and these are for 3 onboard profiles, which you can set up in the Ultimate software, as they call it. Now, this controller also does have a turbo function, which will be bound to this star icon, but by default, this is your screenshot button or to capture a video clip. However, in the Ultimate software, you can rebind this to be the control of turbo function if you want to be able to hold down a button and have it continuously spammed with turbo function. Obviously, don't use that in any kind of tournament or competitive multiplayer situation because, for lack of a better word, it is simply cheating. But if you wanted to be able to hold down the trigger for a semi-automatic weapon and have it fire fully automatic, you do have turbo functionality with this controller, which is controlled in the 8BitDo Ultimate software, which we'll look at right now. For ease of use getting the software program, I will have this linked in the description below. It's app.8bitdo.com. The controller we want the software for is the Ultimate Bluetooth controller. This is downloadable on the Android and iOS store if you want to make these changes from your phone. But if you are on PC, you have to be on Windows 10 or 11. It does not appear as if there is a version or build for Mac OS yet. It is a zip file. Right click, show more options. I recommend 7-zip because it doesn't always prompt you to pay for it like WinRAR. Extract here, makes a little folder, run the exe program, connect your controller to the PC via USB. You got it, champ.
You betcha, champ.
Now this falls right in line with bringing your own cable. I got a 10-foot braided USB-C cable here. Very long, very light, very flexible in comparison to the janky stalker that they want you to run. Not gonna do it, sweetheart. So other than just plugging in the controller via USB-C, you also need to flip it around the backside and make sure that toggle is switched over to 2.4G. Okay, Windows is making a bunch of dings and chimes as it is recognizing and unrecognizing this new device. Mostly unrecognizing because it hasn't been registered yet in this program, and I'm frantically clicking buttons. Having a little connectivity issue here on the PC, and unfortunately, when you want to consult the instruction manual, it is quite trash. This needs an absolute revision. Okay, let's close the software and open it back up. Let's pin this to the taskbar first so I don't lose it. Okay, there we go. Literally the oldest IT fix in the book works 99% of the time. Did you turn it off and turn it back on? It does it for you. We're on Windows. Full screen, please. Never mind, you can't. Can you pinch the sides and make it bigger? No, this is the window you're going to be looking at. Is there a dark mode? It's kind of already in it. Clicking on the sandwich menu in the top left, you are going to have your choice of English and not English. Top right, this might look like settings, but it's not. It's going to show you your controller firmware, or if you're having issues, you can reset to factory settings. You do have 3 onboard profiles that you can switch from with the profile toggle button on the controller. Those are selected here. You can also trash the ones you don't use. Can you rename them? Not from here. All of the control of this application is going to be from these tabs. You start with mapping, and this is going to be, sure enough, your button mapping or keybinds. How intuitive is it to actually change the buttons? Pretty easily, actually. So this is the button that it should be, and this is what you want it to be bound to. I would like L2 to actually be L2. And if you want to deactivate a button, you will select null here, and that will make that button pretty much dead for you. Now, this is just selected in the software, but to sync to the device, you need to click this button here. This is basically saving or applying your changes. Over here in sticks, I do like that this is shown in real time, and this will indicate if you do have any stick drift, which you're not going to because these are magnetic Hall effect sensors. But if we were in a potentiometer world, you would be able to see, ooh, I'm drifting a little bit. But this is going to allow you to adjust your dead zones as well as your maximum input. So if you want full input when you're only pushing the stick halfway, you would just taper this back like that and hit sync to device. You can also invert or swap your sticks if you're a psychopath. And this little button here, we are going to test, but disable dead zone in essence tightens up your dead zones. Triggers, this is also reflected in real time as I linearly squeeze these triggers with different amounts of force. And again, you can set the minimum and maximum input, and you could swap the triggers if you want to see the world burn. You can set the vibration motors in each palm from 5 different levels, and they are quite strong. One massive complaint I have, and if I could dock points, I would, but it just doesn't fall into a category. The rumble force motors are 2 different beasts, at least in mine. They feel and sound completely different in the left and right palm grip, and that irritates me. The left is more of a deep low rumble, and the right is more of a high pitch whine with a different feeling vibration. It's almost less of a deep rumble and more of like a zzz, like a little whir, like an electric toothbrush or something. I don't know if it's a faulty motor or what. It's irritating. It's annoying. Anyway, macros. Now, macros over here is going to let you do simply that. You're going to set up macros to where you can press a string of buttons or inputs, and then you just press one button and it's going to, you know, autopilot for you. Press all those buttons. So maybe you're playing Fortnite, you want to build a damn 3-story structure, you press one button, kick back, crack a beer, wrestle with your girlfriend, come back, structure's built, macros. Sick. I don't use them. It's kind of a form of cheating, just like turbo function. But the controller does have the functionality. That's cool. This software program is decent. It does what it sets out to do. I do like that it is on multiple platforms, basically everything except Mac. It is easy to navigate and does have some good functions and features. It's going to get a 4 out of 5. It would get a 5 out of 5 if you could full screen it or make the window a little bit bigger, and if it was also on Mac. Now let's measure the stock input lag or delay. We're going to run a 1,000 sample test. Xbox controller not found. You're right. Let's go ahead and spoof the PC into thinking that this is an Xbox controller by running a program called Rewazd. There we go. Xbox 360, baby. She's ready for it. So let's give her what she wants. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of 3 and 5s in there. Holy shit, okay. Pretty good first results, an average of 4.8 milliseconds. There is a pretty decent spread between the minimum and maximum, so it's not the most consistent, but also not the worst I've ever seen. Jitter is at 2 milliseconds. The polling rate is showing 205. I'm gonna just... It's 250 hertz, the stock polling rate. Let's run a couple more tests and average it out. So I am actually really impressed by these results. I'll explain why in just a second. So I did a few more tests off camera, and I am getting very consistent results with a minimum and maximum spread between 1 and 8, showing that this is a very consistent wired connection. Also, we're getting an average of 4.8 milliseconds of input lag or delay. That is stock. That is not overclocked. We are going to see if it's susceptible to being overclocked. Of all the Nintendo Switch Pro controllers that I have tested on the channel thus far, this has the best wired results in X input test. Cool. Is she susceptible to being overclocked? Well, that is the $1 million question. Share that screen again, please. You know what? Top left. No, top right. We're going to open the Lord of Mice overclocking program. Okay, we are recognized as an Xbox 360 controller for Windows currently, as we are spoofing the PC with ReWASD. The controller's not overclocked currently. Let's change that. To make sure that this is the right controller that I'm working on, I'm going to unplug it. It disappears. Replug it, reappears as Xbox 360 controller. Install service. Okay. 1000. Okay. Filter on device. You already know that I want to do it. Unplug, replug. I'm an overclocking menace. Didn't do anything though. Let's measure the results. After 3 tests off camera, I can confidently say there is no result from overclocking when the PC thinks that it is an Xbox 360 controller, spoofing it through ReWASD. But we're going to overclock it as a Nintendo Switch controller, see if that works. To do that, we are going to need to completely close out ReWASD. Okay, interesting. So even without ReWASD running, the PC is automatically recognizing this controller as an Xbox 360 controller. The reason for that being, when this controller is wired, it does default to X input. I will say 4 milliseconds of input delay is very good for a Switch controller. So because of that, I'm giving stock input lagger delay a 4 out of 5, and I am going to give overclocked performance a 3 out of 5, as it doesn't do anything, but you do have full control of the controller in the overclocking software. We're going to get into the cons, pros, and then verdict of the 8BitDo Ultimate Controller. Finally, is it really the Ultimate Controller? That's what you watch the video for. All right, let's get the cons out of the way. That instruction manual is pure and utter garbage, as is the included USB-C cable. Packaging is okay, but basically all the included accessories, I think I might have forgot to mention this earlier, so you're hearing it here now, and it definitely is a con. You can only bind or remap the rear paddles from that software program that you're going to need to install on a Windows 10 or 11 PC or on your Apple or Android phone. You cannot rebind them on the fly, which is kind of a shocker because almost every other Pro controller on the market that has rear buttons or paddles, you can hold down some kind of a remapping button and then hold down a face button and rear button and it'll just bind it on the fly. Now, to my understanding, the warranty period is only 30 days, making it by far the shortest warranty I have ever seen for a controller. Granted, this is a $70 controller, putting it more in the realm of a standard controller, but still, that is freakishly short. Now on to the pros, because there is a shitload of them. With this Ultimate version, we're only specifically talking about the Ultimate, the $70 version. We're not even talking about the $50 variant that doesn't have Bluetooth or motion sensing or the magnetic Hall effect thumbsticks. There's a lot of pros. First of all, the magnetic Hall effect thumbsticks, that is only seen in the Ghoulie Kit controller, as well as the SteelSeries Stratus Duo, which is not for Switch. And of the controllers that offer that awesome feature allowing you to never get stick drift, this is the best. It has rear buttons, it has a good ergonomic shape, it has a fan favorite D-pad. I do love the versatility of this controller, that you can play this wired on a multitude of platforms because you have Bluetooth and a 2.4 gigahertz dongle. Plus, if you want to go wired, you have that option as well. 3 input methods, I like that. The D-pad is a huge pro and it's growing on me more and more over time. A big pro is the fact that they include a charging dock, and actually a very good high quality one. The plastics feel good and the little pogo pegs make contact very easily. You just throw this thing in, starts charging. 3 hours is going to get you about 22 hours of playtime. That's great. These 2 rear buttons are the finest that I've felt on a Nintendo Switch controller thus far. Take it a step further, not just Switch, any 2-button controller thus far, this is my favorite. Not saying much because I'm a 4-button guy, but hey, the 2-button realm, these are great. These really are good. Next up, the ergonomics are perfect. This is a super comfortable controller. Next up, and this is going to be seen firsthand during my teardown or disassembly video of this controller, which is coming in the near future. This controller is very easy to tear down and work on because instead of having a bunch of loose components go flying, you actually have a PCB or printed circuit board that holds all of your components in place. And after having worked on the guts of dozens of controllers, this is actually probably one of the most serviceable and easy to work on controllers. That's great. Now getting down to the big fat deep V, the verdict. Is this the ultimate controller? I very well likely will do a very in-depth comparison of all the Switch Pro controllers that I have tested. But in the meantime, I'll just break it down like this. Yes, this is a great value. In fact, I think this is probably the best value Switch controller right now. Does this offer bang for buck or price to performance? Yes. The licensed Nintendo Switch Pro controller is $70. Doesn't do shit. In every aspect, part by part, component for component, this is a better controller, and it's the exact same price. So round 1 is done. Don't even look at the licensed Nintendo Switch first-party controller. Okay, other third-party variants then. You got the Ghoulie Kit over here. I'm just gonna say no. I'm just going to remove it from the conversation. Are you on a budget? Get the Power Enhance, $30, 2 rear buttons. Do you need to have 4 rear buttons, not 2? Or do you just prefer the cosmetic design of the Power A Fusion Pro? This is $10 more at $80 currently. If I could only purchase and own one of these controllers for Nintendo Switch use, it would be the 8BitDo. Despite the fact that you're missing out on 2 rear buttons, they're actually comfortable and ergonomic, as where these will make you question what you're doing with your life. They're freakishly uncomfortable. And at the end of the day, this can't get stick drift. That's huge. Some crazy fancy tier list or chart and table breakdown might be coming in the near future. But as of 10:50 a.m. on November 11th, this is currently my favorite Switch Pro controller. The 8BitDo Ultimate is linked in the description below. I hope you stallions and stallionettes enjoyed the review because, as always, I enjoyed this chunk of plastic. I enjoyed this plastic princess, and please drop in the comment section below any gamepads or controllers you would like showcased or reviewed right here at Gamer Heaven. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the stallions and stallionettes of Gamer Heaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily, all the time, 60% of the time, sometimes, most of the time. Peace.